In 1965, the Sugar Research Foundation paid Harvard scientists $50,000 to publish research that would influence American dietary advice for the next 50 years. Internal documents, hidden for decades, reveal this wasn't isolated corruption. It was part of a systematic campaign to shift blame from sugar to fat, fundamentally altering how millions of Americans think about nutrition. What I'm about to show you demonstrates how a coordinated industry strategy executed over decades successfully redirected scientific consensus and public health policy. These revelations come from internal sugar industry documents that remain sealed until researchers at the University of California, San Francisco obtained them through painstaking investigation. The evidence reveals not just individual conflicts of interest, but a sophisticated approach to manipulating scientific literature that continues to influence nutrition guidelines today. By the 1960s, emerging research was linking sugar consumption to heart disease. Dr. John Yudkin at the University of London had published compelling evidence suggesting that sugar, not dietary fat, was the primary cause of coronary heart disease. Meanwhile, American sugar consumption had increased dramatically from 12 pounds per person annually in 1850 to over 100 pounds by 1960, according to USDA Economic Research Service data. The Sugar Research Foundation, representing major sugar producers, recognized that mounting scientific evidence against sugar posed an existential threat to their industry's growth. Rather than fund research to address safety concerns about their products, sugar industry executives chose a different approach. Internal documents obtained by UCSF researchers and published in JAMA Internal Medicine. John Hickson, Sugar Research Foundation Vice President, outlined what he called a long-term research strategy designed to counter evidence linking sugar to disease. The plan involved funding research specifically aimed at implicating dietary fat and cholesterol, while minimizing attention to sugar. This wasn't defensive research to prove sugar safety. It was offensive research designed to shift scientific focus toward alternative explanations for metabolic disease. Now, here's the detail that makes this scandal even more insidious. The sugar industry didn't just fund these Harvard scientists, they held the final payment hostage. Internal documents reveal that VP John Hickson edited the scientists' drafts, telling them which studies to emphasize and which ones to dismiss. But the smoking gun, a final payment of $6,500, equivalent to over $50,000 today, was held until Hickson approved the final manuscript. Think about that. Harvard researchers needed a sugar industry executive to sign off before they could publish their so-called independent study. They didn't just buy a favorable result. They held the final payment hostage until the science said exactly what they wanted it to say. In 1965, Hickson identified an opportunity. Harvard nutrition scientist Dr. Frederick Stare, Dr. Mark Hegstead, and Dr. Robert McGandy were preparing a literature review examining the relationship between diet and heart disease. Hickson approached these respected researchers with a proposal. The Sugar Research Foundation would provide $48,900 in funding, equivalent to approximately $400,000 today, to conduct a comprehensive review that would refute their detractors. The arrangement was explicit in internal correspondence. Hickson's letters, preserved in Harvard Medical Library archives, specify that the review should shift attention away from sugar toward dietary fat and cholesterol as the primary causes of heart disease. What followed violated fundamental principles of independent scientific inquiry. The Sugar Research Foundation didn't simply fund the research, they directed its conclusions. Hickson provided the Harvard scientists with selected studies to include in their analysis while identifying research that should be excluded or minimized. Studies showing sugar's harmful effects were characterized as methodologically flawed, while studies implicating fat were presented as definitive. Draft manuscripts were submitted to Hickson for review and approval before publication. The sugar industry literally edited the scientific conclusions to ensure they supported their commercial interests. In 1967, the Harvard scientists published their review in the New England Journal of Medicine titled "Dietary Fats carbohydrates, and atherosclerotic vascular disease. The review concluded that reducing dietary fat and cholesterol was the primary intervention needed to prevent heart disease. Critically, the authors dismissed evidence linking sugar to heart disease as inadequate, while failing to disclose their financial relationship with the Sugar Research Foundation, a clear violation of research ethics standards. This publication became foundational literature, cited in thousands of subsequent studies and serving as scientific justification for dietary recommendations that emphasized fat reduction while minimizing concerns about sugar consumption. The Harvard Review's conclusions aligned perfectly with what became official American dietary policy. The 1977 McGovern Committee recommendations, the 1980 Dietary Guidelines for Americans, and subsequent nutrition advice all echoed the same message: reduce fat and cholesterol consumption. Dr. Walter Willett, chair of nutrition at Harvard School of Public Health, acknowledged in 2016 that the industry-funded review had enormous influence on dietary recommendations and research funding priorities for decades. The sugar industry's investment of $50,000 helped generate billions in research funding focused on fat reduction, while sugar consumption continued increasing without equivalent scientific scrutiny. This Harvard arrangement was part of a larger strategy. Internal Sugar Research Foundation documents show similar funding relationships with researchers at universities across the country. The foundation systematically identified influential scientists and provided funding contingent on producing research that supported their interests. The approach was sophisticated. Rather than obviously biased studies claiming sugar was healthy, they funded research designed to emphasize uncertainty about sugar while building consensus around alternative explanations for metabolic disease.
Now, when John Hickson paid these Harvard scientists, they weren't just tasked with painting their agenda in a good light. They were given a literal list of scientific studies to attack.
For 50 years, American dietary advice has emphasized fat reduction while treating sugar consumption as a secondary concern. During this period, sugar consumption remained high while fat consumption decreased. Yet rates of diabetes, obesity, and metabolic disease continued climbing. Countries that didn't adopt American-style, low-fat dietary recommendations maintained better population health outcomes. France, which continued emphasizing traditional foods, including natural fats, has obesity rates less than half of American levels, according to OECD data. When UCSF researchers published their analysis of sugar industry documents in 2016, it prompted significant discussion within the nutrition science community. Many researchers acknowledged that undisclosed industry funding had systematically biased nutritional research for decades. However, reversing 50 years of misdirected research priorities and policy recommendations remains challenging. Scientific consensus, once established, tends to persist even when the original evidence is revealed to be compromised. The tactics revealed in these sugar industry documents continue across multiple sectors today. The same strategies, funding research with predetermined outcomes, emphasizing uncertainty about harmful products, shifting attention to alternative factors, appear in contemporary conflicts over processed foods, artificial ingredients, and industrial agriculture. Understanding this history provides essential context for evaluating current nutrition research and policy recommendations, particularly when industries fund studies about their own products. For people seeking optimal nutrition, these revelations highlight the importance of evaluating dietary advice independently of industry influence. Research funded by companies with financial interests in specific outcomes requires additional scrutiny, regardless of the researcher's credentials or institutional affiliations. The human body evolved consuming whole foods, meat, fish, vegetables, and natural fats, without requiring processed products or industrial additives. When conflicting nutritional advice creates confusion, traditional foods that sustained human health for millennia provide the most reliable foundation for dietary decisions. The sugar industry's systematic campaign to mislead health authorities represents one of the most successful corporate influence operations in modern history. For less than $500,000 in today's money, they redirected American dietary policy for half a century. Understanding how industry funding can compromise scientific literature is essential for making informed health decisions. When research conclusions align perfectly with the commercial interests of their funders, additional skepticism is warranted regardless of the scientists' reputations. The next time you encounter conflicting nutrition advice, consider who funded the research and who benefits from the recommendations. Your health decisions deserve evidence that prioritizes human well-being over corporate profits. If this investigation into industry influence on nutrition science was valuable, consider sharing it with others who make dietary decisions based on research findings. Understanding how corporate funding shapes scientific literature helps everyone evaluate evidence more critically.
Now, I hope you got a lot of value out of this video. If so, I would appreciate it if you would like it and subscribe to my channel. I'll be dropping more videos like this, eye-opening information, the stuff that I've learned on my journey from being 294 pounds and now losing over 100 pounds, completely reversing my type 2 diabetes from 6.6 down to 5.1 and likely lower than that now. It's just a complete metabolic overhaul. And I want to be sharing that with you. So be sure to hit that notification bell so that you'll be notified when I drop these videos. And I thank you for watching. We'll see you in the next video.